Okay.
So you introduce me and so on, and then I just talk.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure you need an introduction, but since you asked for it, Donald Erwin Knuth is one of the greatest computer scientists of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st, obviously. He wrote The Art of Computer Programming, which is somehow the Bible of computer science, and he is also the creator of the TeX typesetting language, which is a programming language for doing beautiful documents and of any kind, so either mathematics or dictionaries or whatever you can think. And when he created TeX, he noticed that the fonts were not optimal, so he created another programming language called Metafont for describing fonts, going back to parametric descriptions of typefaces in the Renaissance. And he used TeX to typeset the code of Metafont, and Metafont to create fonts for using with TeX. So you have all of these tools and technologies combined, always with the goal of producing efficient and beautiful documents. And they are used today by millions of people.
Hey, okay. Gosh, I couldn't have improved on that. So are people watching me now? Can they see
Yes.
me?
Yes, people are watching you. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. The hardest thing when you're Zooming is that I don't have feedback as to what the audience is thinking, but I'm glad you could wave and so on. I mean, if nobody laughs at my jokes, then I don't know if anybody's hearing me.
Okay. So maybe we can start with the interview.
I only want to say one thing first, is that I insisted that Giannis not tell me any of these questions in advance, because I always think it's better to have somebody stumble and give a bad answer. You get more information about that than if I had a canned presentation and already had a script that I was following. The mistakes I make might be more important than the correct answers I give.
Okay. So I wanted to call this interview part the Graphematic model of TeX, and I sent you some definitions about what we could define a grapheme to be. So it's a distinctive unit for a given language system, and a graph. So sorry, because this term has been used a lot. It's very polysemic, but in this context, a graph is just a representation, the material support of a grapheme. And we have here in the audience people who are specialists on that. And functionally, the notions, the concepts of grapheme and graph can be compared to Unicode characters and glyphs, even though the definitions are completely different, because graphemes and graphs are for a given language system, while Unicode has the illusion of being universal.
Yep.
Now, in TeX, TeX source document uses characters, so ASCII characters at the time, and this evolved to be Unicode characters today. These characters, when read by TeX, become tokens and then nodes in a list, and they end up being set char commands in a DVI file. And these set char commands, as well as the nodes, are font dependent. So they are just positions in a font and the font information. And then for this to become visible, you create bitmaps using Metafont, and you load them as bitmap files when printing the DVI document. And the only place where we still have some information on the identity of the glyph in this case is in the Metafont code, where you have the name of the character. So my question is, what was the original idea of an electronic TeX document? Would it be just the source code that needs to be compiled? Would it be the source code plus DVI plus Metafont? Or would it be these plus the process of building the document, using also the format and all other resources?
Okay, so of course, I didn't start out with the idea that I was making something extremely general, or but I was faced with the problem of typesetting one book, and my original idea was that I was going to. I had just learned that that there was good technology to print books that used pixels, bits, instead of chemistry and metallurgy and photography, all that scary stuff. But the task of making beautiful books had turned out to be a computer science problem, which was just zeros and ones. And so, I was faced with the situation where printers were no less, I don't know, mathematicians, computer scientists were left behind because the printing technology had switched over, but we didn't have anybody who figure out what the zeros and ones should be. So I needed something that would make my own books not look terrible. The drafts that I got from the proofs of volume 2 of Art of Computer Programming, well, you can find them in the Stanford archives, but I don't recommend that anybody really look at them because it's so hard to see. And the change away from the quality typesetting of the 1960s to the unspeakable quality of the middle 1970s made me wonder, if I should ever write another book. So I had this problem of trying to find a way to make my books look good again for the second edition, and I found the salvation when I learned that there actually were new machines that could print something that looked like real books using just zeros and ones. So okay, so I started out, and then I don't have any idea of DVI or any of this stuff. All I know is I have a book and I wanted to and I want to get it done. Well, I found out at that time what the state of the art, what the best publishers of mathematic tests were doing. One of the main centers was in Belfast, and so they would compose onto paper tape, and they had skilled compositors who spent a lifetime composing mathematics, and these people prepared things that went to paper tape, and then that went to another machine, and eventually a book would come out. So I learned what their system was, just so I could see what kind of functions, basic functions, need to be included. I also knew of the system that Bell Labs and some other systems that people had for going to documents from electronic format, but those were only imitations. This one in Belfast, that was state of the art for real printers, and not toy experiments. So okay, so I wanted to have something that would be state of the art, and I also investigated different machines that were being made for printing at that time, so that I could, so that eventually I'd be able to send the zeros and ones to a good device. Okay, so how did I start creating this model that you described? And well, it was simple. I looked at my book, and I found about 8 pages worth of stuff that included all the different kind of things that had to happen. I mean, I certainly had to have ordinary text. I had to have equations. I had to have tables. I had to have computer programs, and line art for illustrations. In my book, I really didn't need to have some photographs. But anyway, I made myself a mini book consisting of 8 pages, and I said, okay, now suppose this was my whole book. What language would I use? How would I enter this into a computer? What would I like to do so that? And then it remained to write a compiler that would compile for this little language into instructions for a machine. And that my test program is all reproduced in my book, Digital Typographies. So you can see the very first trial that I made as an input to as an input language that I thought I'd be able to handle, and then there was a second version a couple months later. So anyway, that was where it started. But there was this chicken egg problem, because we didn't have fonts, as you mentioned. First, I had to write something that would make fonts, but then in order to have fonts, you needed something that was going to use the fonts, and so I had to do both things at once. And there was a period of 6 months where I didn't have anything working, but I just had ideas on paper. Finally, the following, I guess it was the month of April of '78, when I spent every night from midnight till 10 o'clock, when the computer wasn't crowded, and put these systems together. So anyway, it started just by something that I was designing for myself and my secretary, and it was supposed to solve the problems that I could foresee that I'd be interested in. Well, but I was working at Stanford's AI lab, and there's about 100 people there, and it's very open, and everybody's watching. Say, "What are you doing, Don?" And so then people said, "Hey, maybe they maybe be interested to do it." And Guy Steele was there, and he decided to port my system so that people at MIT could take a look at it. And so eventually, then I got to a point where there were 100 people using it, and I had to write a manual. And then there was a time when it went to 1,000 people, and every group of people had suggestions for things that I had not included. So it evolved over a period of time. The idea making things more and more universal at every stage. We're introducing, understanding more what kinds of abstractions are going to be useful. So I probably answered less than what you wanted or more than what you wanted, but I'll let you ask another question and then I'll know.
So you never had the dream of Project Gutenberg full with TeX documents, all books ever written in TeX on a server?
I didn't have this as a dream. That came late. I mean, that was too much to hope. I mean, I'm not that good at predicting the future. I'm not any good at predicting the future. I mean, my only dream at first was quality for at least one book.
So my next question is about spaces. So can remind to the public that in the DVI format, you have the write skip command, which is used both for spaces between words or whatever the unit may be, and also for kerning. So it's the same command. There is no distinction between kerning between letters and spaces between words. And I'm asking because the role and the function of spaces is a hot topic in grapholinguistics. We had a very nice talk today on that. And I wanted to ask, was it a deliberate choice to merge the two concepts, the concept of kerning and the concept of word space, even though in the input file you have the space character between words and nothing between letters? So was it a deliberate choice to merge these two concepts?
I think it's independent. In the DVI file, same as in PostScript, you just have this question of you have to have coordinates where everything is being placed, and so whatever commands you need to tell you how to go to a new XY position, you could give full coordinates every time, or you could give relative coordinates relative to where you are. So there's no difference between any positioning command. There's no semantics in there. It's just, that's specifically just to get to identify where to plant the next bit. But in the input, I started out naively only knowing what normal Americans know about spaces, and we had. I mean, the main thing I thought about spaces was that I had seen word processing system where people would use two spaces instead of one by mistake. They wouldn't know that they were inserting different amounts of space. So I was careful to I was careful to say that if you happen to type two spaces, it doesn't get into your document unless you somehow say I meant this to be an extra space. There's also a question of, if we get to the end of a line, does that imply a space or not? And so I was careful to look at that. I didn't know about kerning in those days. I picked that up a little bit later in my reading. I did go to. I spent a lot of time in Stanford typography collection, looking at all the books I could find about how to do good typesetting, but I didn't. But that kind of spacing was not part of my original thoughts. The spacing in mathematics was very strongly a part of my original thing, because I studied. I found for what I call standards of excellence of mathematical typesetting, and I made a lot of measurements as to how they did it, and I also saw how the people in Belfast had manually saying, oh, here I'm inserting a thick space or a thin space in a mathematical formula. So I knew what kind of primitives for that kind of space were going to be needed. But the actual what actually goes into a DBI file it is not, it had nothing to do with the meaning space. It only has to do with meaning of get me from here to there.
Okay, and my third and last question is about the sentence ending full stop. So you are distinguishing in the textbook clearly the sentence ending full stop and the abbreviation point, which is a point followed by a backslash and a space. And this we have talked today about this, and it's a syntactic distinction between the end of a sentence and an abbreviation point for staying in the same noun phrase. So this distinction between the full stop and the abbreviation point exists only in TeX. Unicode doesn't know about this, and even in TEI you only have an XML element for abbreviations, but nothing specifically for the difference between the full stop, which in the typewriter will be followed by two spaces, and the abbreviation point followed by one space. So my question is, do you believe that a typesetting system like TeX should go beyond legacy encodings like Unicode, or should it remain into the boundaries of universal standards? So if Unicode existed in the early 70s, would you base TeX strictly on it, or would you leave some liberty, some room for liberty for users and developers?
I'm thinking that standards grow, and so I mean the Unicode standard wasn't there, but certainly I learned later about all kinds of standards that were enforced in different countries in different years. And I know that, for example, in France, do you put an accent on a capital letter or not? This would go in and out of fashion every 20 years. In Norway, they would okay. In Germany, they had strict rules for how you typeset Roman numerals, and they were extremely pedantic and awful. And just because something is a DIN standard, it meant nothing to me. I'm saying, what should the world really be like? Now, as far as full stops is concerned, the sentence ends also with question marks and exclamation marks and then and then there's quite different conventions in France and America that I didn't realize, but we have something in America we call French spacing, which I think it means that you don't put extra space after a full stop. While in America we're more accustomed to having more space at the end of a sentence, or whether it's a full stop or a question mark or whatever. So I wanted, my original design was to make it look like American books look like, But later on, I learned that for example, there were some books that were banned in America because because they were too sexually explicit, so they were typeset in France, and so I found in the library that they used French spacing there. But in France, I learned later that in France they have this peculiar idea of putting a little space before a colon. Never occurred to me when I was designing things. But the original thing was I had read a lot of books, and I wanted my book to look like the books that I like best. It would make, after the number of users went past 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 and spread to other countries, that I learned about these other things and tried to adapt them. But my original design, I had no idea that something that I was going to do something that would be used by all over the world. I wouldn't have dreamed of that, and actually it became. I mean, I had to decide really that what do I do best, and I decided that what I do best is write the art of computer programming. So I had to go through a period of time where I had to find an end game. How can I leave the work on further refinements of typography as the world changes? How can I leave that to other people? And so I would wake up in the morning and not saying what great new model should I have to improve more and more better ligatures in Tamil or something, but I wake up in the morning and say, how can I finish this project and get it over with?
Okay, and one last question, very short. You know that in grapholinguistics, we are very much interested in phenomena which are purely in the written modality of language, and one of these phenomena is hyphenation. So you have worked a lot on hyphenation. You had a PhD student who created a generator of hyphenation patterns. So my question is, in the Stanford linguistics department, were there ever a linguist interested in your work on hyphenation?
That's a great question. I don't think I don't think any of the people here, any of my colleagues, expressed special interest in that. Yeah, it's so all these things are really important, and I'm so delighted whenever I read your papers in particular, that to see how beautifully you've taken care of these details. And the interesting thing is that they've evolved in so many different cultures, but by so many different kinds of influences, and so it's a marvelous tableau to see people striving for beauty in different ways, and it's an endless quest, but it's also that's the point of life, is to be engaged in these wonderful journeys.
Thank you very much. So I will stop monopolizing you, and we can start with the all questions answered session. Please.
Yeah.
Speak loudly.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Professor Knuth. Thanks for being here. So my question is, it seems to me, coming from typeface design education, that other than the content and the implications of both Metafont and TeX themselves, what also stuck very much in literature and mostly in people's mind today is the debate between you and Professor Hofstadter back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, I guess, about parameterizing typefaces. And it is more often than not presented as a contrast. I even had a full module that back in my master year that was titled Knuth versus Hofstadter. And but now my personal takeaway after reading both yours and his articles is that the overlaps between your views are maybe more than what is sometimes communicated. So I guess my question is, how do you reflect on that debate that seems to have struck 40 and more years of more debates on the topic in the typographic community? I don't know if...
I'm sorry, I don't. Let me introduce my colleague here, Luis Trompardo. He was my right-hand man on TeX in the early days. Can you see? No, he can't see. They can't see it,
but they want to see you. No, yes.
Okay, so anyway, Luis, did you understand his question?
I didn't follow that particular concept.
Okay, you mentioned Hofstadter.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So my favorite story is that Doug said at one point the most important question in artificial intelligence is what is the letter A, and I said yes, and the second most important question about AI is what is the letter I.
That was those.
You don't get it, but anyway, anyway, there's definitely in all. I mean, the older I get, I see more different art forms, and font design is one of the. It covers more than one art form, and it involves so many different things about not only the optical illusions, but also you can get put. I had fun reading Yannis's description from some years ago about emojis and so on. So all these. Okay, so but your specific question is what? What's the...
Yeah, again. Where should I speak?
Yeah, that's
okay.
Good.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you, how do you see 40 years later, how do you reflect on that debate around the possible or not parameterization of typefaces? That debate you had with Professor Hofstadter back in those days.
Okay, well, I still believe that.
Thank you.
I still believe that it's wise to think of parameters, that you're not working, that every project you do should, well, some projects are one-off, but other ones, you know that you have certain things that you can vary, and it's very important to understand how to or to try to focus on how you would vary the design if your boss came in the next day and told you that you wanted it to be different. So if you understand this notion of parameter, that's great. But I don't think you're going to get to a point where we've universally decided what all the parameters are. That's like saying we're all decided what kind of novels can be written and what kind of of statues can be made, whatever. What kind of puzzles can be formed? What kind of jokes can be told? Apparently, there's a best-selling book coming out sort of saying that the 7 plots or something. All literature falls into one of these 7 things, well, the reviewer that I saw was not convinced.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Can you come close? We have a new question coming. That's regarding it.
Okay. Hello, my name is Doris. I have greetings from the German-speaking tech user group, by the way, and I wanted to ask you on your opinion on Comic Sans font. And it has a reason. The reason is that this year I saw a lot of famous people giving talks, and their slides were with Comic Sans, and so I just wanted to know your opinion about it because it's going viral a little bit.
Yeah, that could be a danger, but I came. Also, I was at a conference at MIT where several of the best talks were illustrated with Comic Sans. I first saw it. I think it probably in Christos Papadimitrios' graphic novel, who talks about famous logicians, and but in that work it was only all caps. So I probably went through 5 or 10 years seeing only the capital letters of Comic Sans, but now okay, we're engaged in a project where a wonderful friend, Siobhan Roberts, is compiling a strange biography of me, where we've gone through all of my memorabilia, and we photographed all kinds of ephemera from every period of my life, and letters written and so on. But also I kept a diary, a daily diary of technical things that I was doing. And so this book that she's planning, we're working on it. Probably hope maybe in a year it'll be done. But she's going to be quoting a lot from my diary, and so the question was what font to use for the diary entries, and I said immediately Comic Sans. And but now if you say it's going viral, it's going to be too I don't know, too much part of the furniture that won't give any. But certainly it's right now. I'm going to see proofs of it next month. But I don't know the history of that font, who created it, but we had a font when I was working on tech. We had a font that in the 70s that everybody loved on our Xerox graphics printer. I have to remember the name of it now. But it was rather similar to Souvenir. So a lot of people know the font called Souvenir, and that was so much used in everybody loved it for a period of 10 years that all of a sudden everybody started hating it. and so I don't know when the last book printed in Souvenir was, but there was a time when more than half of the publications were using Souvenir.
Another question?
No technique? Okay. Hi, my name is Lothar. And the big question is, in hindsight, as you said, you have not planned TeX to do all these things and Metaphon to do all these things. But in hindsight, what would you add to these programs? What features are missing? And what would you like to see in a version that's not yours anymore, but what should people put into these programs to make them better?
Okay, so let me first give a joke answer because I gave it. You can look online for a talk that I gave called "An Earth-Shaking Announcement," and this was this was, in fact, I view that as my last technical paper of my life. I mean, there's going to have to be a last one, so I decided that was going to be the last one. Everything else is going to be a blog or something. And it was a talk I gave at a tech user group meeting in San Francisco, and it was in the same place where Steve Jobs used to announce the newest features for Apple products, and I described the future tech project, the successor to TeX, which was called TeX, but you had to pronounce it with tones, and you also, if you did it correctly, you should ring a bell as well. But it had a special logo that included the bell. And TeX basically, so anyway, you can see it. You can see a video of this talk. It lasts a half an hour, and it was a satirical thing where essentially said that I learned that I have no talent for writing programs, so I should instead hire somebody to do the programming right, and they were going to use all of the techniques of software development that satisfy all the buzzwords, and it was all. But not only did it include improvements to fonts and kerning and so on, it also did three-dimensional things. It would include 3D printing. It would include music. It would also include search features. It did mathematical computations. Essentially, it was a combination of Google and Facebook and Mathematica and I didn't have ChatGPT as part of it at the time, but I would have. So anyway, the idea was that this successor to TeX was going to be everything to all people, and it was only going to cost. Of course, it had to be charged for, because that was one of my biggest mistake was putting TeX in the public domain. But it was very nice because it only cost $100 a month, but if you could get 10 other people to sign up, you could get it for nothing, and so there was this Ponzi scheme associated with it as well. The other big mistake I had made was to use literate programming, etc. So actually, I sort of this to be my final paper, because my first paper was a satire that was published in Mad Magazine. when I was in high school. So okay, now that you probably were talking about more seriously. So the things that have come out in like I guess it's TeX and so on are probably the things that are who is it, Jonathan Q or something? He knows a lot about many languages, and I think his insights were especially good as a way to prepare for the future. But I don't know. I think it's important to have something that it is at the same time able to change, but it has to be archival. It should be that a document that somebody writes, an important document, you should be able to see it again 50 years later. And if your conventions are changing all the time, because it depends on somebody's rendering engine or something like this, that's impossible. So one of the most important things was to keep something small, something well enough defined that you can say that this is a permanent document. This is not a trendy ephemeral document. I mean, the World Wide Web has a subset of HTML that I can use that they say they're going to keep going forever, and I think that's very important.
Okay, there are many font designers in this room, so I cannot help but ask the question. When you started collaborating with Herman Zapf, were you speaking the same language? And I don't mean German and English, I mean between a computer scientist and a font designer. Were there any terminological or conceptual hurdles?
I think Herman and I hit it off rather well. I mean, there was this question about he was thinking about using brushes and pens, and he taught me what he meant by this, and our early discussions about the Euler typeface went through. We had dreams that couldn't be fulfilled because they were probably trying to do too much. But I think okay. So I dedicated I dedicated the metaphor to Herman, and I said to Herman Zapf, whose strokes are the best. And I meant that in two senses. Not only do you have this marvelously beautiful strokes that he would draw, but in English there's another meaning of strokes, which means that compliments. And so whenever I did something that he didn't approve of, he would tell me right away. And so I knew that when he did occasionally give me a compliment, that it was that it was real. And so I really appreciated the strokes that were slaps in the face, as well as the strokes that were saying, okay, done, you're starting to get it.
Any other question?
Very quick. I have a very quick question. What is the poster behind you? Is that an ambigram?
That is by Scott Kim, one of my students, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad it shows up. Let's see that. By the way, I saw Scott last Sunday, and so he now has kids getting out of college, and he's he's having fun making some YouTube videos with one of his sons.
Any other question?
Yeah, I love these questions.
What happened?
Oh, I think we lost him.
Were any of you at the conference at Stanford last year? That Tom Malloy organized. I mean, look, many shared interests. Like I talked to the people who did the cuneiform fonts, for example, and Chuck Bigelow was one of the keynote. Well, we had quite a few great speakers.
Hello, Don. This is Martin Dust. I have a question, a little bit less technical. You're extremely healthy and active and so on. And I wanted to ask if there's anything that, well, what keeps you healthy and going and yes, so.
Well, I've been lucky, although, okay, so a week ago I lost a cataract on my left eye. Next week they're going to take the cataract off on my right eye. At the moment, I don't see. I mean, I see differently with different eye. I'm trying to learn how to stay healthy, and so I swim typically 4 days a week and ride bicycle. But while I'm recovering from this eye surgery, I'm supposed to go for a whole month with no swimming, no biking, no gardening. But generally, but I do think the human body was designed to do certain things. So I look for opportunities to walk rather than to ride. Let's sort of put it that way. My balance is getting worse. I'll have to do some more exercises to improve my balance. And who knows what's ahead. If some illness hits me, I'm not going to be angry about it. I'll be thankful for all of the good. The good health I had, but while I stay healthy, I'm going to do my best to continue producing more of the art of computer programming that's sitting in my files waiting to be written. And some of you might know this novel by Lawrence Stern from the 1700s called Tristram Shandy. And it's the story of the life of Tristram Shandy, and the first, the first 10 chapters cover the first week of Tristram Shandy's life, and so then he starts to realize he's not going to get through the whole story, but the next year, next second volume or something of Tristram Shandy came out, and Lawrence Stern said, I plan to just come to my publishers and deliver more copies as long as I can. And so somebody asked me, what do you do, Don? And I say, well, I eat, sleep, and write content.
And since we are asking less technical questions, in the textbook you say to the reader, go forth and create masterpieces of typesetting art. And nowadays, ChatGPT is also doing tech, and so theoretically can also do masterpieces of typesetting art. So my question is, what will you do if you receive a bug report coming from an artificial intelligence? Will you pay the hexadecimal dollar, and to whom?
Whoever sent it, if it's a valid correction, the hit rate isn't too bad. I mean, I went through. Okay, let me say, a month ago, publisher said we're going to reprint volume 1, 2, 3, and 4A, and so please give us. Every time a new printing comes out, I go through all of the error reports that have come in, and so since February, it turned out that there were more than 150 separate issues that people had raised, and I would say only about 30 of them were really bad or not worthwhile. Even when somebody thought there was an error, but the text was okay. Still, I could improve the text so that this person wouldn't have thought there was an error. So I went through these 150 things, and each one is independent of the others, and so it took me more than 2 weeks, and that was only for 4 of the books that I have in print. So I've got a big stack of mail to answer after I finish the next thing. But my current project is I'm hoping to finish volume 4, fascicle 7, which is if all goes well, will be printed in December, and I'm writing the last 10 pages now, and next week's I start on the index to it.
Okay, any other questions?
So, but certainly if okay, so these large language models are tremendous fakers, and they're so good at saying plausible things, and if I get a what is it, like a distributed denial of service attack with reports, then I'll have to figure out how to cope with that. But right now, I would look to see if the comment is plausible. Boy, I hope nobody tries it though. Long ago, in the 60s, Joshua Lederberg made a model of what constitutes a viable protein, and so then there was a question of, so you could write a computer program that would come up with a million viable proteins, and the question is, well, what if he sends them all to the U.S. Patent Office? To get a patent on it, so that's to me, all connections with money are the least important to my life, but I know that it's not true for everybody.
No more questions. So I think,
Maybe we could say goodbye to Knuth when we turn the camera and maybe this will
yes,
go
the camera is to you,
Ah.
is watching you. So I think we're finished.
Okay, well, I appreciate you guys staying up late to watch this.
So thank you very much, Don. And bye.